Welcome to the Sackness Native Initiatives webinar series. Our webinar today will discuss Native language and revitalization efforts. This topic is very near and dear to our Native American and Indigenous community, as many tribal nations and Indigenous communities work to keep their languages alive and thriving. My name is Daryl Monto. I am the Sackness Native Initiatives Manager. I am a member of the Kiowa Tribe of Oklahoma and also of Apache and Comanche descent. The Sackness Native Initiatives program is excited to provide this programming for our Native American and Indigenous community. And we will continue to work to bring more webinars on issues that matter and opportunities to our membership. Before we begin the webinar, I want to welcome our first-time attendees to Sackness. We are an inclusive organization dedicated to achieving true diversity in STEM, where the field reflects the demographics of our country's population. As the nation's largest multicultural and multidisciplinary STEM diversity organization, Sackness creates space where all members, partners, and staff feel they belong and can embrace and celebrate their intersectional identities. At this time, I'd like to share some ground rules for our webinar today. At the end of this presentation, we will have time for a Q&A session, and you can also use the chat feature to say hello to other fellow Sacknistas. The rules that we ask our audience to follow: please submit typed questions via the Q&A feature. Be polite, mindful, and respectful in the chat. And when asking a question, feel free to share your institution or location. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. Dr. Annette Kiwipulani Wong, who is an assistant professor at the Kahea Center for Hawaiian Language, and Kahea Faria, who is an assistant specialist in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. I will turn it over to them so that they can share more about themselves, and the webinar will begin.
These pictures that I've shared kind of shows who I am as an individual, as a native speaker of Hawaiian. So in this first picture up here, where is my cursor? But with a group of people with Lili'u. So this is an effort I participate to help these individuals to be the voice for these individuals in a legislative setting. I also think the picture in the middle with my daughter when she was about 2, I believe that our children should learn from their elders. So that's my daughter. I think she should learn from the folks that I learned from. And then to the right, these are my children at the beach. In terms of utilizing language, I think it's functional as well, purposeful. So they were at the beach, they're washing their pig. That's our pet pig, that's their pet pig. We don't just go to the beach to enjoy ourselves, but also think about what can you do there? What work can you get done? And then below is a picture of them washing clothes with their hands, because we don't have a washing machine there. I think teaching my children how to work and take care of themselves is important. So when they came back to Oahu, they are so happy that we have a washing machine and a dryer. So since then, they do the laundry, they fold the clothes, and they do everything. It's so much easier because they don't have to wash it with their hands. As a teacher educator, these are teachers from Niihau who came through the College of Education and graduated with their teacher license. Funny thing is, as a child, they were my teachers. So when I came to the University of Hawaii at the College of Education, the role was reversed. In my mind, they're still my teachers. I still learn from them. But within the college, I became their professors and their instructors to help them get their license. And then the last picture here in the corner, This is the mayor of Kauai back then who supported this initiative of Kaleoana Kupa to help with our efforts to revitalize Hawaiian language in the way that we grew up with. Aloha me kapo. Oia ho'omawana. So just to start us off, Niihau is where we both come from, as Ipo said, and shared a map about where we come from. It's owned by a white family. It was bought by the Sinclair family, and they bought it from King Kamehameha V. So when they bought the island, it wasn't just buying the island. There was also this unwritten understanding, kuleana, to not only this land that they bought that they owned, but there was an understanding that they would also take care of the people, not just the land, everything about the land, but also the people who live on that island. That understanding and that agreement continues and it's upheld to this day, which is why, in a lot of ways, why the Hawaiian language continued to thrive on Niihau is because of this agreement, this unwritten agreement between the Sinclair family, which is now the Robinsons, and Kamehameha V. So to start us off, just to kind of a reminder that in 1896, the English language became the language of the schools, both public and private. And then this second to the last sentence here, any schools that shall not conform to the provisions of this section shall not be recognized by the department. So just to give us an idea, it's not that the language was banned for this law. We couldn't speak Hawaiian in school. And this was in 1896. And I wanted to compare that to last year. So in 1896, the English language became the medium of instruction in all public and private schools here in Hawaii. English is positioned here as the sole language of schools. And schools, of course, teach students how to become citizens of that country. Therefore, it is implied that English is the language of government and commerce in Hawaii. In 2019, though, this bill, or several bills like this, came out. And I'll read it. All documents as of January 1st, 2020, all documents and letterheads prepared by or for state or county agencies or officials shall include accurate, appropriate, and authentic Hawaiian names and words, including but not limited to macrons and glottal stops, so diacritical markings. That looks good, right? Like diacritical markings help people learn Hawaiian. It looks good. So just as English became the medium of instruction back in 1896, that affected every Hawaiian speaker in Hawaii. As we can see now, not a lot of people speak this language. So in 2019, as good as this bill looks, it sought to mandate and standardize things like diacritical markings in Hawaiian orthography, something that Ipo and I don't use, or I don't know how to use it. Ipo is a professor of foreign language. She's learned to use diacritical markings pretty well. So for me though, and then for everyone else who's not in the university system, this is a challenge. Bills like this is a challenge for us because I can't read. My reading changes when there's diacritical markings in there. It's no longer a flow. It hinders my ability to read and to understand as well. So I have here it got cut off, but you can see these are names of newspapers, historical newspapers. And as you can see, there are no diacritical markings in old historical literatures in Hawaii. And then in new texts like Mamakakaya, which is one of the resources listed that we can refer to as being appropriate, authentic, accurate, appropriate, and authentic Hawaiian names and words would come from sources like the Mamakakaya, which is good again, but it is a challenge for us because we would need to learn new vocabularies that was developed by second language learners. So, and not only were they developed, it was created, some were created to replace, and it replaces other words, other historical Hawaiian words. So it becomes a challenge for us speaking this language. It becomes a challenge because then we no longer understand what that means or what people mean when they speak, when they use Hawaiian. So these are the bills that were introduced in 2019, 3 bills. 2 seeks to require the use of diacritical markings, and then 1 seeks to standardize Hawaiian language. Again, when we're standardizing Hawaiian language, it's a language that would be different from the one that Ipo and I grew up with, and the one that we understand and use. Yeah, not the ear. Okay, so to address that, those are the issues in place. So to address that, our efforts, Ipo and I, and of course the community that we come from, is to preserve and to promote this language of Hawaii that we grew up with. Not only to, and how do we do that? We want to support Hawaiian language learners. So what we've done in the past, and Ipo will continue to talk about the activities that we do with our teacher candidates at UH Manoa, is we bring them in and provide opportunities for our Hawaiian language learners to engage with native speakers. So in terms of teacher training, listening to native speakers, and then imitating how they speak. Our hope is that this helps raise the proficiency levels of Hawaiian language learners by engaging with native speakers.
Sorry. Aloha mai kako. So this is our part as Kahea, share that, working with our students and her working with her students as teachers. So the discussion between me and Kahea, it always come up to our mind is that how can we help our own students that we educating them to learn our language, yeah. So how can we bring the level of proficiency to our level as a native speakers? So the discussion, that we decided, okay, we need to take them into our own community. So this is one of the, we have done this 2 years. So in 2018 and then 19. So we took our Hawaiian language students from Kawaihuelani, And then Kahea also brought the students from College of Ed. So the picture that you're looking at it now is, this is the first time experience in being around the Manaleo native speakers. So the first thing they do is we'll just take them straight to church, and then have them practice their listening and reading skills in order for them to understand the native speakers' perspective. They have to be in that space. So we took them to church. So this is the church that our family goes to, the Niihau community. And then the one on the next, on the right, is also pictures that we took where the family get to engage with the students, first language, and then as their second language. So this is where they also get to engage with our native speakers. Okay, next. I think it's next, Kahea. Okay, this is a really purposefully engagement for our students and the owner of the island. So in this picture over here on the left, this is a farmland that belongs to the Robinson family. This is really a rare opportunity for students, especially for outside people, to engage with that family. Normally, they just live a private life. They don't want to be bothered. But I think that was last year, yeah, Kahea. So we took them, and then they opened us to go in and just have them engage. And I think for us is teaching the students not only on the language part, but to really understand the life of the Niihau community. They learning, and then and at the same time they're learning through the language too. And Mr. Robinson also speak fully like Hawaiian, so it was something that they didn't really expected that that is how they can really speak Hawaiian. So anyway, this is a part of for them working together with the community. And then the picture on the right is, not only working. So we expect our students to have fun too. In that way, they will learn to have both ways, working in the farmland, and then also what to do when they have to go and then have fun with native speakers. So this is my brother and my nephews, and our nephews taking them to ride horses on one of the land on Kauai. So this is one of them. And then Kahea, can you move on to the next one? And as you can see, this picture over here is we're able to fly to took them to Niihau, that small island that I showed in the beginning of my our presentation. So we were able to, with the support of Kaleona Kupa from the former mayor, Bernard Cavallo. So he supported our initiative. So we flew over there, and then we spent a whole day with the native speakers on Niihau. So this is the pictures they're taking to show them how to gather resources to feed them. And so this one is one of the my nephews and my brother fishing, taking the student to learn from the community. And I think what's important over here, a lot of our students don't have this kind of lifestyle at home. So learning from an expert like this is really important, and then it kind of shows them the value of, for people that depending their life on the ocean and the land is really important. So on the picture on the right, they're not there just to observing. They have to use their hand. They have to learn by doing it. So I have two students over here trying to scale the fish that they catch, and then cook it for dinner too. So for us is, for me, trying to teaching them, it's a learning experience for our students, not only learning from the language part, but they have to also learn by just observing what are they doing, what are they looking, are they be able to see. And then the other part is that they're able to feel, to see them, and to feel and to have that conversation with them. I think that's really important for our students. Okay, next slide, Kahea. Is it a next slide? Yeah. Okay. So that picture prior to this one, it's actually, it was an engagement with the community to go and clean the beach on Niihau. When Japan was hit with the tsunami, so all the rubbish that floated, it landed on Niihau. So the whole island was all trash. So they were a cleanup that we talked to the owner of the island. Do you want us to come and help? We have students here that really can engage with the community, just to kind of learn. We're not only over here living on the land and to catch the fish from the ocean and try to grow our own food, but we have to clean up, because if we don't clean, and then how can we expect to eat clean fish? So we were allowed to go there. So as you can see, this picture on the left, and this is all the students that we took with us, and then a couple of the family that met us here to help them to clean the beach. And I really like this picture on the right above. This is really sharing and storytelling. So on the day that we flew there, so what we did, we went around one side of the island to clean the beach. And then we went back to, there was a camping area where you can sleep or spend a day. So anyway, we went back there to have lunch. And it was during that lunch, it was so really interesting for me having our students engage with the native speaker on Niihau. They have to be able to really understand what are they trying to say, right? So anyway, there's two students who were sitting with one of my niece, and I was sitting with them. So my niece kind of asked them in Hawaiian. This is what she said. Olo mate uhai hipa. So I knew right there and then they didn't get it, So I asked them, I said, did you folks get it, what she said? Did you really understand what she said? I said, well, I heard hipa, one word. Hipa is sheep, yeah? So actually my niece was asking me, you guys like go catch sheep? So they didn't get that. So after that, having a sharing and storytelling, and I think what's really important for us is just to show our students that even though you can say aloha, pehe oi, mai ka'ino, but when you're in a space of a native speaker, what you cannot compare yourself to the level of a manaleo, a native speaker. So this is where they have to be, just to kind of bring in an awareness for them. And then for me, it's the awareness for our family is that knowing that these students learning Hawaiian from here at the university and coming into their community, that they're able to communicate in Hawaiian. And I think it's something for us, wow, these students can really speak Hawaiian. But for me and Kahea, because we're in the we're educator, their level of language for us, it's not up to par at the native speakers level. So for us is to bring their level to our level. That's the goal, that's our goal. And I think this has really important for them and for us too. And then to bring that awareness to our community too, because we are kind of known that are not my generation and Kahea, the generation way below us, they tend to speak more English than using Hawaiian, their own language. That also to bring awareness to them that, look at these students, they can speak Hawaiian. And then what about you? So the picture below, it's what the sharing that, what was their experience, being on that island, what was their experience? What did they feel? What did they learn? So I think it was here that my niece, my niece was raised by my mom and my dad, and she was so impressed. So this is what my niece had came out of. And, she speak Hawaiian. My parents spoke only Hawaiian to her. They didn't know how to speak English anyway. So they only spoke Hawaiian to her. But when she came and she heard the students and then the way that I was communicating with the students, and they, and she said, Auntie, I want to go back and learn Hawaiian. This is my niece. How's that? So I told my niece, I said, why? You have your mom over here. Why don't you learn it from her? You have it right in front of you. There's the native speaker, like in front of you, your kumu. And she said, oh, but I want to be like you. And that really kind of startled me because, we're just doing for the effort of our language, to bring awareness to our family. And I just, that really went touch me because what my niece is trying to say is like, if I can communicate like that to my students, and the way I was communicating, it was I communicating to my own community. I wasn't bringing my level lower to lower my level down to the students' level. Oh no, I was speaking to them as if I was speaking to my own community. So I think that's where she felt that, oh, if I want to be like you, Auntie, I want to go back to school and learn. So I said, you don't need to go to school. You can just learn it from here, from your mom. And I think a lot of us is that, we take advantage of our kupuna. And, I really miss my grandparents, my grandfather, and especially my parents. They're the pillar, for us. They're the one that raised us. Without their knowledge and the language that they kept to themselves, and then didn't so without them, I don't think that I would be where I'm at now. I really mahalo for my parents for raising me. And, growing up on Niihau, you don't really think it's going to be a value one day in your life. So this is what I'm experiencing in my life. So try to go back to our nieces and nephews, trying to use more English. Maybe Kahea, you can share a little bit of your own experience with your nieces and nephews. The way they speak, it's not, sometimes, you think you can really speak good English. Sorry about my English, because that is not the language at home at all. And I'm teaching just fully Hawaiian. And at home is, Hawaiian is the only language. So because of this conference, and then, we're expected to share this knowledge with the broader audience who's interested in what we're doing with our community. Mahalo.
Oh yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, like other challenges that we face as native speakers, I besides what Ipo said about our children wanting to learn English and be good in English, I still think that's a good thing. One of the challenges is, I think, our educational system and the policies that we put in place around language, like the Senate bills that I shared earlier, but also in the educational system, there are policies in there that kind of pushes this requirements for diacritical markings or to use certain vocabularies that our children have to relearn what they are because they're new. They're newly created vocabs. Also, I think for our own, in terms of native speaking children, these other outside influences, Facebook, TikToks, and then just looking cool, being able to speak English. My dad, the first word I swear in English that he learned was terrible. He used that word in every other word that he said. He used the word terrible. Why? Because he can speak English now. He knows one word in English, and it's terrible. So he uses that to make himself look like he can speak another language. And I think that comes from our educational system. It's that bill from 1896 that tells us English is the language of instruction, the medium of instruction. And then we all had to go to school. Everybody got lickings probably for speaking Hawaiian, except on Niihau, where the owners went and learned Hawaiian so that we didn't have to speak English. So here are, these are currently our challenges for us, and just the influences of, again, kind of like English, influences of L2, like Ipo's niece, hearing our students speak Hawaiian, my children, I do speak Hawaiian to them. But their grandparents who live here, my husband's parents, they don't speak Hawaiian, so they speak English. So their Hawaiian is kind of different. So when we visit my family, they speak of how beautiful my kids speak Hawaiian. And you know, when you hear those things, you know that they're different because their language is different from what the native speakers actually use. And it's a self-check for me. That's on me that my kids speak differently, that native speakers would say, oh, they speak beautiful. How they speak Hawaiian, it's so beautiful. Do you hear them? That's cue for not the same, and that's probably not a good thing. So again, these are our challenges as native speakers. It's even in our own house. The changes are occurring. And yeah, we are over time and we apologize for that, but mahalo nui, no ke ia manawa, ina he mauni no. Questions?
Okay, I think we have a question for you. And for our audience, please feel free to start submitting your questions in the Q&A feature. So thank you both for taking time. Again, we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and the efforts that you've been working toward. So our first question, the question is, who has been behind the bills and efforts to standardize the language and use diacritics? Is this the case, one of a divide between academia and the community, or a case of a divide between Native Hawaiians and the government?
I don't want to point out to people that individuals or even groups. I think it's just because of that silencing of voices. I think diacritical markings are good for language learners. I think there are tools for learning Hawaiian. But yes, the efforts to standardize it kind of goes against our way of speaking it. It forces us to use it. should I say, that's hard to answer because Ipo is in academia as well. Our community, they kind of look to us to be the voice, to be here, to see what's going on in this space and to address it, to be that voice to address it. If we weren't here, things like this would just go through. But I wouldn't say that it's a divide between academia and community per se. I'm in the College of It and I speak the way that I do, like I do at home. And Ipo does too. She teaches Hawaiian language. And our government really is very supportive. When we went to the legislature to kind of share who we are, it's just because nobody knows. It's more of making people be more aware of who we are, that we're still here, that we exist, and this is the language that we speak. So for the government, for the legislatures to hear that, they're very supportive. Those bills did not go through, but not that they don't always come up, they do. Even though the pandemic has been, hard on all of us, but in this case, we didn't hear any bills on anything regarding language because we're so caught up with any of the bills that came up had to do with COVID. So for me, in terms of the ledge, well, that's a breather. I don't have to worry about any other bills coming up because there's no space for those things to come up at this time. So it's, I don't know if I answered that question. I'm going around that question. I can't point to who is behind those bills, but they do come up quite often. And I think it's for me and Ipo just to bring awareness and educating people.
Okay. Next question we have, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce this, and I ask that you bear with me. Can you tell us a little about how the Niihau Hawaiian differs from the native language spoken on other islands? And they wrote it out, and they apologized for the diacritical marking if it was incorrect.
I can answer that. Okay, so for the Niihau Hawaiian language, we use the K and T. That's the difference. And then native language spoken outside of the island, they just use only K. So an example of using Niihau language, aloha kato. Yeah, so I'm using the T and kato. And then if it's in outside, in aloha kako. So that's just a different. Is the only difference is the K and the T. But not all Ks turn into, you can switch it into Ts, because there's Ks that needed to stay as a K, and then there's a K that changes into Ts. So an example is, one of the example is lako. We never say lato. We don't put a T by that K for a lato. There's always a lako. So when people say, oh, all you need, you want to speak Niihauans and you just change all the K's into T's, that's the language. No, that is not the language. You're just using your own Niihau, I don't know, if you changes every case into T's, then that would be not a Niihau language. It would be whoever changes that, then that will become their language, because there's certain words that we use, and you never change the K's into T's. Mahalo.
And I think too, besides that, what Ipo shared, the letters that we use, is also the thinking. It's this use of metaphors, like it's naturally used every day. My children started using metaphors when they were like 2, learning how to speak. So that use of language to mean something else, it naturally occurs. So besides to answer this question, besides the T's, the K's, the V's, and the W's, the sounds, the intonations, are also this other deeper understanding of language and how to use them to benefit yourself so that your parents don't know what you're talking about and you don't get lickings for it.
Okay, the next question. For Niihau family libraries, are digital recordings being made or videos kept to document L1 stories?
I can answer that. Yes, there's Kaleo Hawaii tapes that has been recorded, and then it's open to public. That's Larry Kimura was the one that worked on Kaleo Hawaii. So that's in libraries. And right now, where I also do a native speakers day that I invited to come to Manoa to engage with our students here. So those are all digital recording that we have in Kawaihuelani, in our own Hawaiian language resources. So those are still in the resources and it's still in the work that we need to do editing because it's all raw material that is not ready to share with the public. So when the time is, when it's ready, and then, there'll be resources out there for, and we've been sharing all of that with the broader community in Hawaii on Facebook. I think it's on Instagram. Those are resources that we having the native speakers from Niihau to come here and just to engage. Mainly it's just to share their stories, the life they've grown up and what they learned. So basically it's all a story about their life from Niihau, growing up on Niihau. And there might be other mores, and there's like Pukui, Merikavena Pukui's tapes that also housed by Bishop Museum. So there might be other mores, yeah.
Okay, next question. How many different Hawaiian dialects are in current use?
I can respond to that one. So in terms of dialect, my understanding of dialect is that if there are more than one community of native speakers, then you have dialects. As we only have one community of native speakers left, there are no more dialects. So with that definition, it's no longer a dialect. It's the only native speaking community left in the world of Hawaiian language. So it is the Hawaiian language.
Okay, question from Kyle. Are there similar skills methods that teachers who teach non-native languages, such as Spanish, that can be adopted by teachers who teach native languages, such as Hawaiian?
Maybe Kahea, you answer that because you work with teacher education.
I think there are. Working in the College of Education, I've had teacher candidates, Japanese language, along with Hawaiian language. So that's a great idea. And I think even for my husband teaches Hawaiian language, and I really encourage my husband to kind of change how he try to change how he teaches Hawaiian from a grammar-based, structure-based type of teaching to actually utilizing language and not just teaching language. Language is important, but also teaching history. Like from the first year of Hawaiian, maybe just learn about the Hawaiian Islands. what the name of the islands are, and then the names of the ocean in between these islands. So changing the way how we teach just language, but as the content, but teach content of Hawaii as well, the ali'is, our history, our culture, that should be integrated in teaching language through many different ways, reading, writing, but also mele, singing, and activities like how Ipa and I are doing. So that language is not isolated in a classroom through paper and pencil and listening to a teacher, but also they're engaging and doing work using this language and looking at how these grammar patterns that they're learning in class, how it applies to what they do in their daily lives. So that's we need to look more into those methods and how well it's working for other languages.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Next question. I grew up in Puerto Rico. Our language is Spanish, but because we are a U.S. territory, we have both Spanish and English classes in schools and in universities. Is that something possible in this case? Would it help your efforts?
I'd like to say that that is what our current Hawaiian language immersion schools are, where students learn English in 5th grade. So they graduate as students who are fluent in Hawaiian and in English. And I think our efforts in that is to continue to support that work and to support teachers who are in class with our students.
Another question. How are the younger generations of Niihau speakers coping with the modern world with new information and concepts?
Kahea.
Ano ako pa? Ake mapialat mo na ako na rin.
Younger generation of Niihau speakers coping with the modern world with new information and concept. They're like they know more than me. I can say that. When you give them, you know, even with my 2 grandchildren, that little finger, you know, going on the iPad and searching for movies to watch, and sometimes it kind of like, okay, you know, their advance of technology, you know, I think they're pretty good, you know, using all those resources. But for me, you know, I learn, I just want to learn of, you know, things that I need to daily. You know, I don't need to learn all these other stuff. If I want to learn it, then I just have to ask somebody for turn on the TV and put on a movie for me. But yeah, I think, you know, they don't have problems. You know, they don't really have problems. But I think for us, you know, our efforts over here is to bring awareness to our younger generation. You know, just to see that, you know, here you are, this is your language. Yeah, this is your language. Why are you speaking English? And yet, look at these students from Manoa, you know, coming into your community and speaking Hawaiian to you. Yeah, and yet you turning and then, you know, using that language. It's not the generation of me and Kahea, it's the younger one. So I'm worried about my my grandchildren because they're verses in both language, and which is good. I have no problem, but I think, you know, to be aware of, yeah, I am Hawaiian. I was raised with that language. I want my grandchildren to speak Hawaiian to me. And I think that's a choice because they're not with me all the time. They're with the parents, and the parents, I don't know what language they're using at home, but if they're in my home, Hawaiian is the only language that we speak. But of course, they use both language. yeah, I see that they don't have any challenges in learning new technologies.
And I think, okay, sorry, I did say English is a second language. So it took me a while to kind of read over and over again to understand, I think, what this means. So new information and concepts. And I think because of, in terms of younger generations, they have their parents there. And then because the parents are well versed in this language that they speak, they are able to explain new information and concepts in Hawaiian. And even for me, if you give me a vocab and you tell me to define it, you'll have to explain what it means in English so that I can find a definition. I can be able to describe and explain what it is in Hawaiian. It may not be a one-word description, but it is the Hawaiian that I can come up with. So in terms of coping, they are able to explain.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna have one final question. I'm actually gonna combine these two. These are come from Heilani. So her questions are there other cultures and native speakers who are experiencing similar challenges to preserve language? And then also the second part is, how can an organization such as ours, SACNAS, help support your initiatives and the work that you do?
Maybe Kahea. You go answer that.
Are there other cultures and native speakers who experience it? I listened to Dr. Keone Smith's presentation maybe a few weeks ago, and I like to say, yes, there are other cultures and native speakers who experience similar challenges in language preservation. For Ipo and I think we would need to spend more time, or we need to put in some time in learning more about those other cultures and native speakers and how they are preserving their languages. It would help us with our efforts.
All right. Well, we want to thank Kuipulani and Kahea for taking time out of your schedules to give this presentation. We truly appreciate it. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar. I do have a few things that I want to share before we end. A little information about SACNAS. Please stay tuned for more webinars from SACNAS. You can always find upcoming webinars and previous webinars at sacnas.org/webinars. We have a lot that we held over the summer, a lot of good content, a lot of good information, and we will be rolling out more information on upcoming webinars in the weeks to come. Next week, we will be hosting one on Indigenous math, and really looking forward to that. So there's still time to get registered and signed up for that one. And today is Giving Tuesday. If you enjoyed this free webinar and would like to see more programming like this in 2021 and beyond, please consider making a gift to SACNAS in any amount today. You can visit sacnas.org/give to make your donation or find other ways to support us. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, everyone, and we will see you next time. Thank you.